I wish I could tell you this started with some dramatic shouting match or a midnight trespass, but no. It started with me coming home early from a supply run and just stopping my truck halfway up the ridge because something fell off. You ever get that feeling? Like your brain notices something wrong before your eyes can even explain it. Yeah, that. Because where there used to be gravel, there was fresh, black asphalt. Smooth, clean, still smelling like it had been laid that morning. And my driveway, my actual driveway, the one I'd been maintaining for almost 2 decades, was gone. Just gone. Now, I own about 20 acres up in northern Idaho, tucked into this hillside that most people would call remote, but I call peaceful until someone ruins it. The land itself? Valuable. Not because of a fancy house. I built that myself, but because of the timber and the gravel deposits I lease out to a small local contractor. Nothing huge, just enough to keep things steady. And the only way in or out. A narrow stretch of road that cuts across the edge of my neighbor's parcel. It's not some handshake deal either. It's a legally recorded easement from 1987, written into both deeds, crystal clear, permanent access, fixed path, non-negotiable. For years, nobody had a problem with it. Hell, the previous owner barely even noticed me. Then about 8 months ago, everything changed. That's when Kyle and Vanessa moved in. California plates, brand new lifted truck, and that energy, you know the one. Like they just discovered rural living on Instagram and decided they were going to monetize it. Turns out, that's exactly what they were doing. They bought the parcel next to mine and started planning these high-end rental cabins, luxury forest retreats, or whatever buzzword they were pushing online. First time I met Kyle, I was out grading my driveway after a heavy rain. He pulls up, leans out the window with this easy smile, asks me about drainage, snow in the winter, all that neighborly small talk. And I told him straight. Yeah, I've been maintaining this easement myself for years, keeps things simple. He nods, says something like, good to know, real casual, then drives off. And I remember thinking, that was too smooth. Fast forward about a month and a half. I leave town for 2 days to check on some equipment downstate. Nothing unusual. Lock up the house, head out. When I come back, I don't even recognize my own access road. Because not only is it paved, it doesn't even lead to my house anymore. The asphalt curves, literally curves, away from where my driveway used to be and veers toward his construction site. My entrance, completely covered, buried under a fresh layer of blacktop like it never existed. I just sat there in the truck for a minute, engine idling, trying to process how someone wakes up and decides, you know what, I'm going to erase my neighbor's legal access point today. So I call him. He picks up on the second ring, cheerful, like we're discussing barbecue plans or something. Hey man, I go. Kyle, you paved over my driveway. And there's this pause, not long, just enough to tell me he already knows exactly what I'm talking about. Then he goes, oh yeah, we upgraded the road. Upgraded. Like he just installed a better version of my property rights. I tell him, no, you didn't upgrade anything. That path is legally defined. That's my access. And his tone shifts. Not aggressive at first, just firm. Well, the new route works better for our layout. It's wider, smoother, you can still get in and out just fine. I actually laughed at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I said, it's not about fine. The easement follows a specific path. That's not optional. And that's when he drops the act. You're being difficult, he says flat. We had contractors here, we had to optimize. This benefits everyone. Benefits everyone. Except the guy whose legal access just got wiped off the map. I could feel my jaw tighten, but I kept it level. You don't get to redefine my rights because it's convenient for your project. And he hits me with this, still can't believe he said it. Look, if you want to keep things friendly, you'll just use the new road. Friendly. Yeah. Nothing says friendly neighbor, like bulldozing someone's easement while they're out of town. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Sat there for another minute. Then backed the truck down the hill because I literally couldn't reach my own house the way I always had. Had to take this awkward detour around his construction zone, weaving between equipment like I was trespassing on my own land. And as I drove past his site, I saw it. Dump trucks, concrete mixers, crews moving fast. This wasn't some small adjustment. This was a full operation, and my driveway had just been sacrificed to make it easier. That night, I pulled out my deed, dug up the original easement documents. Maps, measurements, everything. And there it was, clear as day. The exact path, the exact 180-foot stretch, the exact route he had just paved over. No ambiguity, no wiggle room. And that's when the anger really settled in. Not explosive, not yelling, just cold, focused. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision, a calculated one. He figured I'd come back, see the new road, and just go along with it. Take the upgrade. Avoid the conflict, play nice. And honestly, that's probably what most people would do. But here's the thing. I don't mind being reasonable. I don't mind compromise. But I don't do well with being erased. And standing there, looking at that smooth stretch of asphalt where my driveway used to be, I already knew this wasn't going to end with a conversation. It was going to end with a correction. And Kyle had no idea what he just started. Now let me pause the story for a second, because this right here, this exact situation, is where a lot of people get confused, and honestly, where guys like Kyle count on that confusion to win. According to standard procedure, an easement isn't just a suggestion, it's a property right. It's written into the deed, recorded with the county, and tied to the land itself, not the person. That means when you buy a property, you're also buying whatever obligations come with it, including letting someone else legally cross a specific part of your land. You don't get to improve it, reroute it, or redesign it just because you think your version looks nicer on paper. From a legal perspective, the keyword here is location. If an easement is defined with a fixed path, and mine was, then that exact strip of land is protected. Changing it without agreement? That's not an upgrade, that's obstruction. And obstruction of an easement is one of those things courts tend to shut down fast, especially in rural states where access is everything. But here's where it gets more interesting. This isn't just legal, it's psychological. This is a psychological trap, and it's surprisingly common. Someone makes a bold move, something inconvenient, maybe even illegal, but they wrap it in the language of helping or improving things. Then they rely on social pressure. They expect you to hesitate, to not want conflict, to think, well, maybe it's not worth the fight. Kyle wasn't just building cabins, he was testing boundaries. He made a decision that benefited him, created a new normal, and assumed I'd adapt to it. Because once you accept the change, even once, you've basically validated it. And that's the real game here. Not the asphalt, not the driveway. Control. All right, now back to what happened next. So the next morning, I didn't call Kyle, didn't drive over, didn't argue. I called my attorney. Her name's Denise Harper, local, sharp, the kind of person who doesn't raise her voice because she never needs to. I'd worked with her once before on a timber lease issue, and if there's one thing you learn fast in rural property disputes, it's that you don't play guessing games with the law. I told her everything, start to finish. The paving, the reroute, the phone call. There was a pause on the line, then I heard papers shuffling. Send me your deed, she said. And the easement documentation, every page. An hour later, she calls me back. And her tone? Calm, but very, very certain. Yeah, she says, he can't do that. No hesitation. No gray area. She walks me through it. The easement is fixed, the route is defined, and what Kyle did. That's interference. Doesn't matter if the new road is wider, smoother, or paved with gold. It's not the agreed path. And legally, that matters more than anything else. So Denise drafts a letter. Not aggressive, not emotional, just precise. It gives Kyle 10 days to remove the asphalt covering the easement and restore the original access route. No threats, just facts, and a clear next step if he doesn't comply. We send it certified. Now here's the part where most reasonable people would stop, reassess, maybe call, maybe apologize, maybe fix the problem quietly. Kyle. Not most people. 5 days later, Denise gets a response, but not from him. From some firm out of Portland. Clean letterhead, polished language, that whole, we bill by the minute tone. And the message is basically this. They claim the new road provides equal or superior access, and therefore, there's no real harm. In fact, they say the change benefits me. And then, this is my favorite part, they suggest formalizing the new route into a revised agreement. In other words, sign away the original easement and accept the version Kyle already built. I remember sitting at my kitchen table reading that, just shaking my head, because it was so obvious what they were doing. Create a new normal, then pressure me into legitimizing it. Denise didn't even blink. We're filing, she said. Within a week, she had a motion in for injunctive relief, basically asking the court to step in and stop the interference, and if necessary, force restoration. And while all that's happening, Kyle's project doesn't slow down at all. If anything, it speeds up. Every day, trucks are rolling in. Lumber, concrete, equipment, everything moving along that freshly paved road, the one that used to be my driveway. And every time I pass through that detour, cutting around his site just to reach my own house, I can feel it. Not just inconvenience, displacement. Like my property had been quietly pushed to the side to make room for his business. I tried talking to him one more time. Caught him on site, standing near a crew. I said, "You got the letter. You know what this is. Fix it." He didn't even look concerned. Just crossed his arms, glanced at the road, then back at me. "My lawyer says we're fine," he replied. Of course he did. 2 months go by like this. Legal filings, responses, back and forth. And then finally, we get a hearing date. Now the judge assigned to the case, Judge Caldwell, had been on that bench for over 20 years. Local guy. Grew up not too far from where my land sits. Which matters, because people like that, they understand what access means out here. We walk into that courtroom. Nothing fancy, just wood paneling, quiet tension, and that feeling like everything's about to get very real. Kyle shows up in a pressed button-down, his attorney right beside him, confident, maybe a little too confident. Denise lays it out clean. She presents the deed, the easement map, the timeline. No theatrics, no exaggeration, just facts. Then Kyle's attorney gets up, starts talking about modernization, efficiency, mutual benefit. Tries to frame the whole thing like this was some kind of upgrade I was irrationally resisting. And I'll give him this, he was smooth. But the judge didn't seem impressed. At one point, he leans forward, looks directly at Kyle's attorney, and says, "Counselor, where, exactly, in this document does it allow your client to relocate the easement without consent?" Silence. Not long, but long enough. The attorney tries to pivot, talks about practicality, about how the new route doesn't restrict access. The judge just nods, then flips a page, taps the document. "The location is defined," he says. "That's not optional." And just like that, the tone in the room shifts. A few minutes later, he delivers the order. No drawn-out speech, no drama, just clear, direct instruction. The asphalt covering the original easement is considered an obstruction. Kyle has 14 days to remove it and restore the driveway to its prior condition. If he fails to do so, I am authorized to carry out the restoration myself and bill him for the cost. That's it. Gavel down. Decision made. We walk out of that courtroom, and for the first time in weeks, I feel something close to relief. Not victory yet, but direction. Because now it's simple. 14 days. That's all he had to do. 2 weeks to fix what he broke. 2 weeks to avoid what was coming next. So I waited. Day 1, nothing. Day 5, trucks still rolling. Day 10, asphalt still sitting there like it belonged. And by day 14, not a single inch had been touched. I remember standing there that evening, looking at that road, smooth, perfect, completely wrong, and thinking, all right, you made your choice. So the next morning, day 15, I made mine. I called a guy named Rick, local operator. Been moving earth longer than I've owned my land. Knows exactly what he's doing, doesn't ask unnecessary questions. I told him, I need an excavator. Tomorrow. He just said, what size? That's when you know you've got the right guy. We met early. Sun barely up, air still cold. Denise showed up too, not to argue, not to intervene, just to document everything. Photos, video, timestamps. And we notified the sheriff ahead of time, just to keep things clean. No surprises. No confusion. Then Rick fired up the machine. And let me tell you, there's something very final about the sound of an excavator biting into asphalt. That first crack, sharp, loud, echoed across the hillside. Then another. Then the bucket dug in, lifted a slab of that blacktop like it was peeling back a bad decision. For hours. That's all it took. For hours to tear out the pavement, rip through the base layer, and expose the original ground underneath. By the end of it, the upgrade was gone, reduced to broken chunks piled off to the side like it never should have been there in the first place. 2 days later, we had fresh gravel laid, drainage restored, the original path back exactly where it belonged. Clean, functional, legal, and right on cue. That's when Kyle showed up. Him and Vanessa pull in, stop dead when they see it. His road, is gone. He gets out of the truck fast, slams the door, starts walking toward me, face already turning red. "What the hell did you do?" he shouts. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't step forward. Just handed him a copy of the court order. Denise's card clipped to the top. "You had 14 days, I said. He barely looks at the paper. "You just destroyed $12,000 worth of work." I shrugged. "You destroyed my access first." He starts talking about lawsuits, damages, all the things people say when reality finally catches up with them. But here's the thing. That moment, that was the end of the conflict. Because everything after that was just paperwork catching up to what had already been decided. So yeah, that's how it ended. Not with some dramatic standoff, not with cops dragging anyone away, just a machine, a court order, and a line in the dirt being put back exactly where it belonged. And if you're thinking, man, that escalated fast, it didn't. That's the part most people miss. This didn't escalate fast, it escalated quietly. One decision at a time, one assumption layered on top of another, until suddenly you've got a full-blown conflict where one side thinks they're innovating and the other knows they're being erased. Because here's the truth. Situations like this aren't really about driveways or asphalt or even land. They're about boundaries. Not just physical ones, but psychological ones. The invisible lines people test when they think they can get away with something. Kyle didn't wake up one morning planning to steal an easement. At least, probably not in his own mind. What he did was something a lot more common and a lot more dangerous. He convinced himself that what he wanted was reasonable, and once you believe that, it gets real easy to justify stepping over someone else's rights to make it happen. The lesson here is, entitlement rarely shows up looking like entitlement. It shows up dressed as efficiency, improvement, progress. It sounds like, this works better for everyone, or you're not really losing anything. And if you're not paying attention, you might even start to question yourself. But that's where people get stuck. Because this is a psychological trap. Once someone creates a new reality, like paving over your access and handing you an alternative, they're not just changing the physical space, they're changing the frame. They want you reacting inside their version of events, not yours. And the longer you operate in that frame, the harder it gets to push back. That's why timing matters. Not emotionally, legally, strategically. From a legal perspective, hesitation can cost you more than confrontation ever will. The moment you allow an obstruction to remain, the moment you start using that temporary workaround, you risk weakening your position. Not always immediately, but over time. Because now there's a pattern, a new normal. And courts don't just look at documents, they look at behavior. And that's something people don't talk about enough. Standing your ground doesn't mean being aggressive. It means being clear. Clear about what's yours, clear about what's not negotiable, and clear about how far you're willing to go to protect it. Now, does that mean you should run out and rent an excavator every time your neighbor annoys you? Probably not. I mean, unless you want a very expensive hobby and some interesting conversations with law enforcement. But what it does mean is this: know your rights before someone else decides to redefine them for you. Because once they do, you're no longer just dealing with a disagreement. You're dealing with momentum. And momentum is hard to stop if you let it build. Looking back, the wildest part of all this isn't even the paving. It's the confidence, the certainty that I would just accept it, adapt, stay quiet to keep things friendly. And to be fair, that works more often than you'd think. Most people don't want conflict. Most people will tolerate inconvenience if it avoids confrontation. And guys like Kyle, they count on that. But here's the flip side. Once you push back, calm, documented, within the rules, you change the entire equation. Suddenly, it's not about who's louder, or who invested more money, or who has the nicer-looking road. It's about what's enforceable, what's written, what's real, and reality tends to win, eventually. Now, after everything was said and done, Kyle did try one last move, filed a claim to recover the cost of the paving, said I caused unnecessary damage. It didn't go anywhere. Judge dismissed it, ordered him to cover my legal fees, plus the cost of restoring the gravel and drainage his construction messed up. Clean, simple, final. No revenge arc. No dramatic apology. Just consequences. And maybe that's the part people don't expect. Sometimes the most satisfying ending isn't explosive, it's quietly correct. Everything back where it belongs. Now I'll leave you with this. If you came home tomorrow and found part of your property, your access, your rights, something you rely on, just changed without your consent, what would you do? Would you adapt to keep the peace? Would you confront it right away? Or would you try to find some middle ground and hope it works itself out? Because every choice leads somewhere, and not all of those paths lead back to where you started. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than I probably should, and I'm curious how you'd handle it. And if you've ever dealt with something like this, even on a smaller scale, I guarantee your story's worth sharing. And yeah, if you're wondering whether Kyle and I ever had another conversation after all this, well, let's just say, some neighbors wave. Others learn to stay on their side of the line.